And welcome into another episode of the Too Many Points show on the Tell Me More podcast. I'm your host, Mac Moore, and this show is a blend of sports betting and off-the-wall topics. I won't say hot takes because they're lukewarm at best. That's why I invited Colin Wright on to join me, because there's no two people in the world better at lukewarm takes than us two. Colin, how's it going today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on. Happy July.
It's crazy that we're already halfway through the year. I don't think anything was accomplished. I don't feel like too much was accomplished in the first 3 months either, so really can't even blame it on COVID all that much. But that's definitely put a damper on the back end. At this point, though, July is the start of all of sports returning, a ridiculous amount that it's too many to believe. I'm not willing to believe until we see even one to start. But the laundry list, MLB, is supposed to get started. You got MLS, you got WNBA, you got the NBA, NWSL. I don't even know what that is. I just threw it on. That might be the Women's Soccer League, maybe? Does that sound right? So, yeah, that one's already started. And I believe one of the graduates from Liberty High School that I cover, I think she scored a goal in the first game back, so I should have known what NWSL is. My bad. There's just a long list. Once you get all those acronyms in, and then you got obviously the last one being just NFL training camp, which will be a good barometer on whether we will actually get any sort of sports going forward. But at this point, Colin, I guess, do we want to start positive or negative? I'll let you choose.
Let's get the negative out of the way.
All right, so do you actually think that we're going to get these sports? Everything is so, here's the course, here's what's happening. But when you look around, and not just the NBA trying to start at Disney World in the middle of what is just a map of coronavirus cases in Florida, but when you look at the possibilities of sports, how optimistic can we be about this happening when there's already been so many, mini setbacks before we even got into any real sort of play?
Yeah, it feels like with NBA allegedly supposed to start real games at the end of July. I know they're traveling this week and next week to Orlando. They're going to be starting games at the end of the month. It feels like still 50-50 to me. I truly believe the players are going to get to Orlando. I truly believe they're going to scrimmage. I even think we're going to have some actual games on TNT, ABC, and ESPN. But do I think they're going to play the 8 scheduled regular season games and then the playoffs with no bumps? Not a chance. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it feels like they're going to start it, and then all of a sudden they're going to be like, okay, we got to stop for a few days. Or we got to have – this team had half their players – come down with some sort of illness. And of course, you're going to have the other tricky part where you don't want to say someone has it, but then he's just out for undetermined reasons, but we can put the pieces together that it's COVID-19. So I think that it's going to attempt to come back in the next 3 to 4 weeks, but it's not going to be smooth. Like, I truly believe this fall there's going to be a football season, but I don't think we're going to play week 1 through 17 like normal, like we have for the past 100 years or whatever. So there's a lot of different dynamics. There's a lot to it. There's so much money to be made. So I understand like where the players, the general managers, the owners, the TV companies, they want to make it happen. But it just feels like this is too good to be true. Like we can read between the lines. We know the number of cases in this country. I don't think it's going to happen as smoothly as some people expect it might.
Yeah, I have no optimism that it will happen to any degree, because even something like the NBA that is so thoroughly planned out in terms of how to make sure the players don't have it when they show up, in terms of testing to make sure that they don't have it throughout the week, in terms of creating this bubble, which obviously they left the big factor being that the Disney World employees aren't going to be stuck in the bubble. And so if they're out and about in a place that has an extremely high number of cases, then that's going to put you back and destroys any sort of, you just can't even call it a bubble at that point. Like, that's not what a bubble is. So it scares me that the NBA got so close, and then still you look at it and you're like, I just can't imagine this, even if it did work for a while, the holes are still there, and, you know, are they going to, like, step up and put any more money? We saw a report that came out today where they've already spent $150 million to try to make this bubble. Are they going to start adding to the cost to make sure that each of the employees that's there trying to make sure this works, that they're going to stay at Disney World as well and stay as part of the bubble? Or at least maybe if they're off-site, they're at a hotel where you've created some form of bubble for them and make sure that they're not just going out and living their normal life. Without those things, there's no way that's going to work. I think once you get to the other sports, that anything like NFL, I just don't imagine it working in any sort of way. It's also the NFL, so it's going to give the biggest college try to make it happen. They're not backing down in any way. But I think NBA probably has one of the best shots. Maybe MLB, with kind of the way the game is structured, kind of just limits it a little bit better, but they're not doing the same types of protocols that the NBA is to make sure you're not getting COVID while you're somewhere else. So the optimism is not there for me for anything to happen, let alone we're talking about at the college level. I think that's a crazy scenario. And at the high school level that I'm covering, it's hard to imagine this working without major setbacks. Maybe not everywhere, but without a doubt, if you're doing that at every high school across the country, or at least every high school across the South, we know there's no way there's going to be 0 games played in the state of Texas for football. We will see what happens, but I can't be optimistic. Other than I can shut my brain off and imagine what happens if this works out, and then that's where we lead to the positive, which is, what would be the thing you're most excited about seeing in sports if they're able to return?
So the first thing I thought of was a Major League Baseball 60-game season, just because I have no idea what's going to happen when you take 102 games and just throw them away. And you say, okay, you guys have 2 months. Go play. And if one team all of a sudden gets hot and wins 8 games in a row, guess what? The chances of them going to the playoffs are really, really good. So I haven't watched as much baseball the last couple of years, just because I had so much fun in 2014 and 15 with the Royals winning the American League 2 years in a row. But this year I'm more excited to watch baseball than I have been in 5 years, just because I don't know what's going to happen in 60 games. But I want to see managers like just lose their minds over a regular season loss, because it's going to have 3 times the weight it did last year.
That's a good point, and I think people have talked about the games being, with just 60, that's going to add some level of excitement. Could that get some either casual baseball fans, mainstream sports fans that don't really focus on MLB? Could this broaden the audience by making it where it's not this 162-game just marathon stretch that people, even baseball fans, kind of tune out? Like, they still watch games, but they're not really paying attention for certain stretches of the season. I guess the problem is it's 60 games over a short window. If this was something where it was a little bit longer, there was more time in between, which also would help with the potential of testing and doing what you need to do to try to make this a safe venture, then I could see that working, where it does become more of each game is an event. But instead, it's just going to be like, we just lopped off a whole chunk of the season. Hopefully this 60-game stretch is enough for you. And it does add that randomness to who can win. And, yeah, maybe the Royals could do something. I don't think so. But they have just enough pieces that are young that if somebody does better than you expect them to do this year, and you just have that lucky stretch, all of a sudden you could be in play. I doubt it, but it's always a possibility. And it should be more interesting than usual, but I also just can't imagine MLB, like, what they could have done if they just would have started earlier. Like, if they would, because they could have done what I just said, where you spread out the games, also could have had a long stretch where they're the only one on TV. And I think there's a chance MLB could just be structured in a way that it can survive COVID in the way that other sports can't. And maybe it starts up, they do fine. NBA starts up, they shut down a week later, and it's still just MLB being the only major sport to be going. Obviously, NFL, NBA, and MLB reign supreme in the U.S. Even soccer fans aren't nearly as enthused about MLS. So those are the main ones. MLB could have gained some ground that it's been losing, becoming the true pastime. How much do you blame either the owners, the players, whatever it is? How much are you upset with kind of that process and how it played out over the last month?
It was really hard to watch because I feel like, obviously, Major League Baseball, we knew months ago they weren't going to have their opening day on March 27th like was originally scheduled. So you go ahead and you take off the first month or two of the season, and then for the last 5 or 6 weeks, you've just had back and forth where the owners want something that the players don't. The players want something that the owners don't. To me, what's hard is the owners, they have the power, they have the money. It's like it's the millionaires versus the billionaires. Like, which side are you going to take? Well, I'm going to take the players' side because the players have, if they're lucky, 5 to 7 years where they can make some money. The owners are getting paid year after year more money than 99.99999% of the world. And so I'm not going to feel sorry for the owners losing revenue because they can't sell tickets this year when they've been cashing checks for decades. A lot of them have been the same. It's been in the same family for a lot of these teams for a long time. And so it was definitely really frustrating that the owners wouldn't come to a more sensible agreement when I'm not saying the players were 100% did nothing wrong, but it was just really odd to see the owners being like really greedy and selfish and not wanting to give until they finally came to an agreement. But it took a month. They could have had games a week or two ago. We could be already watching teams playing their 14th and 15th game. Instead, they haven't even started training, and the games are still 3 weeks away. So,
yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think when you think of millionaires versus billionaires, like there were way more, MLB stars, really any sport that you pick, way more guys who grew up in a life that we can recognize and connect with, way more than the number of owners who came from some sort of a modest upbringing. So in terms of that connection, I don't feel any connection to owners of teams. I'm really glad that the opinion you just said and that sort of idea is starting kind of take hold, because it used to be very strongly that fans just agreed with the team. It wasn't necessarily the owner. They didn't even think about the owner, but they were siding with the team and not realizing that when you're telling the athletes that, oh, you're these millionaires complaining about playing a sport, you're choosing the side of the billionaire who is making even more money by not doing a damn thing. So I think that it's good to see that kind of flip. And in this situation, the MLB owners put themselves into an extra hole because they agreed to a deal thinking they could smooth their way into a better deal later. They should have never agreed to pay the MLB players all of their salary if there was a reduced schedule, but they did. And they're like, oh, we'll fix it in post. And then in post, you start releasing sources that are trying to paint the players in a bad light. It's like, no, we know what happened. We know that you agreed to this, and then we know that any sort of, oh, we'll lose this amount of money. If we play more games, we'll lose more money. And it's like, you need to figure out your business a little bit better. If not having fans but having all the TV rights is going to lose you more money each game, as opposed to those TV rights, if you don't play, you just lose money. And then any game that's played should be additional revenue for you filling the contract of what you have with the TV stations. Like, if you're losing money over that, you did this wrong, and we're not going to feel bad for you. The other thing is you're probably lying because you're not even showing us your books to tell us. So I'm not even a big MLB fan. I've only marginally kept up with this, but each time I jump in to read Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic, I just look at the details. I'm like, how have the owners tricked like sports fans for decades? Like, they're not even that smart. They literally just live on the side of, hey, we kind of have the advantage going in, and the moment that, you know, we got the internet and we're able to actually figure out, all right, here's each team owner, here's how much money they have, here's how they bought the team, here's, you know, how much money they've gained over, you know, you look at the evaluations of teams in the 2000 to what it is now. Any sort of cry for help from an owner and pretend that it's like fans side with the team, it's like, no, you should figure this out, which I think leads to the thing I want to talk about even more, is going to the NFL, and we're both Chiefs fans. We've seen kind of what Chris Jones has done as a defensive tackle for the Chiefs. We've also seen the fact that he's been elite at his position, and I think he's made like $10 million total, which, once again, you could say you're a millionaire when you compare it to other people that can do what Chris Jones can do on the field. He is severely underpaid, and going into this stretch, the Chiefs kept talking like they would give him that contract. They would make this happen. Then they made moves that when they were done, they're like, can't you, like, and fans have said this, not just the Chiefs, how do we do this? How do we pay all these people? Like, Chris Jones is just kind of, you know, what can we do? And it's like, well, no, you knew these things were coming, and you chose go get Frank Clark. You chose pay Frank Clark before you pay Chris Jones. You know the Patrick Mahomes contract was going to be record-setting, and so just because you've been planning for that doesn't mean that what you're doing to Chris Jones makes sense. Now, from the team perspective, fine, but I'm definitely not going to like side against Chris Jones if he thinks he needs to hold out. He thinks he needs to do what he needs to do to get paid because he deserves it.
Yeah, I think that Chris Jones deserves a lot of money, and I think he deserves it soon. So it's a tough spot for the Chiefs to be in, because if they wouldn't have given Frank Clark the big contract a year ago, then they could have, you know, saved that money for Chris Jones. And obviously, I don't want to argue that Frank Clark wasn't worth it, because I think Clark's going to be a really big part of the defense for the next 4 or 5 years. But it gets tricky, because if Chris Jones wants to hold out, I'm not going to blame him one bit. If he's not going to play right away in August and September, then I support him, because defensive linemen, their careers aren't very long. Like, they never have been, but I think they're shorter now than they used to be. They just take a toll. And especially, you know, it used to be like a 16-game season. Well, the Chiefs have won the AFC West the last 5 years. And so now it turns into a 17, 18, 19-game season. So his body's going through a lot, and he deserves a big paycheck. How the Chiefs going to make that work, I don't know. But I fully support Jones in him thinking that he's worth a lot, because he is.
Yeah, and my only real critique of Chris Jones is that the system is not built to get you your money. So when you end up referencing Le'Veon Bell, who did sit out for an entire year, and most people didn't think that would happen. On my NFL show podcast, my co-host Bobby Gallinvo essentially told me he was going to play by like week 4. And I was like, I don't know. He seems like he's pretty set for this. And sure enough, he sits out the whole year. And it was the one time it had happened. There was Bobby bet on the status quo, what we knew. He didn't know how crazy somebody could be. Le'Veon Bell didn't even make the right decision for him, because the money he lost there, we've seen from the way he's played since then with the Jets, the way the Jets end up paying him, he's not making back that $20 million. He lost a year, especially at a position, you talk about defensive tackle, running back's another one where you have a finite number of years. It's very hard to play for more than that. You know, like, your body's going to break down, and even in this new NFL where you're more of a receiving back, that hasn't really changed. If anything, it's easier to find somebody who can do the same skill set, because the value for being a great running back just isn't there. And even if it was, your body would break down too quickly. Le'Veon Bell just lost money. He also got out of New York, or got out of Pittsburgh to go to New York the year after he sits out. Chris Jones won't be able to do that. If Chris Jones sits out this year, the Chiefs can just sign him to the next franchise tag the next year. Then it'd be the following season that he'd be able to get away. So I think in all actuality, the most likely scenario would be for him to hold out for as long as he can to make a point, similar to what he did the previous year, and then he'll play under the franchise tag, and the Chiefs will likely shop him to figure out a place that will pay him $20 million a year. It's going to be tough because that market is just too high for a defensive tackle. It was set by Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald is literally the only person on the planet that is worth that money at the defensive tackle position. And that's not any sort of slight against Chris Jones. Aaron Donald is just this like super freak athlete that is just so much different. He goes in the offseason, practicing his arm drills with knives and just swinging around him, going all Karate Kid. Like, there's just nobody else that has the success he has at that position. And the only other comparable contract is DeForest Buckner, who also isn't worth the $21 million he's getting per year. And Chris Jones is probably worth $18-19 million. If there's somebody who will pay DeForest Buckner $21 million, there's probably somebody who will pay Chris Jones at least $20. You have to find that team. That team has to not think that they have the leverage what they do, and they'll probably just offer a really, nothing draft pick to end up getting him, similar to what happened with Dee Ford. And maybe that's just the best option anyways for the Chiefs is get Chris Jones as many years as you can, maybe even finish this year, and on the second franchise tag, basically be a wink and a nod to Chris Jones. We will trade you, And if that's what you need to do and just try to run it back for 1 year, that could work. I think the only thing that scares me is that when Chris Jones talks like this, that sort of pushing back and forth can make it where they can't kind of reconcile for 1 year to make it work. Because I have to imagine Chris Jones at the end of the day will take the $16 million per year. It'll double what he's made so far in the NFL, and it will give the Chiefs another year to have that great player on the field. It's just, if you're going to start going at each other's throat this many times, this many years in a row, I don't know how much is just posturing and how much will become bad blood. And if that happens, that hurts your chances of repeating with Chris Jones on the team.
Yeah, I feel like the way things are going, that the Chiefs and Chris Jones, that Chris Jones will play in Kansas City in 2020, and then obviously into the playoffs in 2021. But let's say worst case scenario, if something happens where Jones holds out, keeps holding out, or the Chiefs find a team willing to give him that contract, what does that do to the Chiefs defense? And more specifically, what does it do to the Super Bowl chances if Jones is not on the defensive tackle position in this fall?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because, to run it back, you actually have to have a season take place. But when you're planning for that season, if you just assume it's going to happen, you need Chris Jones to be there, at $16 million tag, definitely. And whatever the number is, like if it's $21 million, like that's fine this year. It is in future years where the Patrick Mahomes number will, end up just kind of nixing any chance to give Chris Jones that extension. All of those players, when you're putting, two guys on the line who are making $20 million plus, you just can't have that for your defensive line. You just can't. And there's so many other players that need to get paid, which I get it for the Chiefs. It's also like you made that decision already, and pretending like it snuck up on you is disingenuous, which once again, I don't even know how much the Chiefs have really said that. It's mostly the fans making bad excuses for their team. And it's like, no, like this, at the end of the day, if Chris Jones chooses a player or doesn't choose a player, I'm not going to be upset at Chris Jones. He's doing what he needs to do. Chiefs are trying to do what they need to do. And, at the end, I assume he'll still play this year. Hopefully he gets his money. It'll almost definitely be somewhere else. It just, at this point, there doesn't seem to be an avenue for the Chiefs to decide we're going to be the one who pays you to be here and be a defensive tackle at $21 million, whatever it is. The other big contract talk, this one, actual action, signing the New England Patriots, of course, go out and get Cam Newton for a league minimum deal that, even with incentives, will be $7.5 million. So that means if Cam Newton jumps in and gets the Patriots back to the playoffs again, he will be cheaper than most of the backups in the league, or at least most of the marquee ones that he was probably competing with for a contract earlier. At this point, like, are you more impressed with Bill Belichick or more upset with the rest of the league for letting this happen over and over again?
So it's funny because I thought it was going to happen 4 months ago. Like, Cam Newton was no longer a Panther, and I was like, okay, Brady left New England. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks the Patriots could go after, but maybe one of them is a guy that went 15-1 5 years ago and is a winner and is mobile and can throw the ball and can run the ball and is tough and wins games. So I thought it was going to happen months ago. When the draft came and went and the Patriots didn't draft a quarterback, then I was like, okay, maybe Jarrett Stidham's the guy, which is naive because I should have known that they were going to do something. And, of course, they get Cam Newton. So I honestly thought because of Belichick and McDaniels and the Patriots organization, they're still going to be a playoff team. I really thought they'd go 10-6 even without Brady. But bringing Cam Newton and having him, from what I've seen, I think his rehab has gone well. I think he's healthy. I think he's going to have a big season. I think they're going to win the AFC East. I think the Patriots are going to be one of the top 8 teams in the NFL. I'm not going to predict much more than that, but they just got better. I know that. And I know Belichick has plans already to use Newton, and I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the league. So I'm not surprised by it. I just didn't know it would take until the end of June to happen.
Yeah, and I think part of it happening at the end of June, I mean, people wanted to point to the fact that the Patriots got hit with their penalties for the Spygate redo, the round 2 of just having these infractions of trying to use cameras on the sideline to steal plays, whatever. And this one they had a much better out. There wasn't a lot of great evidence, but it's also, I think, for most people who are NFL fans, they're just like, they did it. They did it again. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But they end up losing some draft picks and a pretty hefty fine, all things considered. But also, where that would have probably been the news cycle for 2 or 3 days, immediately the story is about Cam Newton. They think they dropped the Cam Newton press release about 15 minutes before the announcement of their penalties. And it's the PR of Bill Belichick. For a guy who won't talk to the media, he's really good at PR. It's crazy. But I think in terms of what Cam can do, it's all about if he's healthy. If he's ready to go, like the last time we'd seen him fully healthy was 2017, and I think the Panthers went 11-5, and he didn't look, nearly as good as he did his MVP season in 2015. He also had Christian McCaffrey as a backup to Jonathan Stewart, and nobody else on the team. At that point, it's Kelvin Benjamin and just scraps. Devin Funchess, and then I think Greg Olsen was injured the entire season. So at this point, it's not like the Patriots have much better to offer, but they potentially do, because as opposed to a team full of kind of people who've proven that they're not really game breakers, Patriots fell apart towards the end of last year with their skills players, but Sony Michel, when healthy, is a good running back. James White out of the backfield. It depends on how they try to play, but that is going to be a good outlet for Cam Newton. You have N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry is somebody who is a first-year wide receiver who showed spurts of being good. He also was what you would expect from a first-year wide receiver, inconsistent. That could change in year 2. Julian Edelman out down the stretch. That's a guy who I'm pretty sure Cam Newton will use Julian Edelman like he's Steve Smith. So I don't have any fear of Cam Newton figuring out how to utilize the weapons that are there. And then they drafted 2 new tight ends. It just depends on if those 2 can be productive in year 1. But already what I would imagine would be better than what Cam Newton was using in the last couple of years. And it's always just going to be down to whether he's healthy and what kind of offense are you going to run. Well, I think you got to figure out the best way to get Cam Newton to have design run plays, and that's going to be so much, just night and day different than what we saw with Tom Brady, but not that much different than what we saw when, was it Jacoby Brissett coming in and they go on a 4-game winning streak? I think Bill Belichick can figure this out. That's just my guess, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. In this case, we're gonna do overs and unders on the first two things we talked about. Let's start with Chris Jones. Over under. How many games does Jones miss this year? I'm gonna go 1.5 as the over under.
I bet he misses 3, so I'll say over.
All right. Over under number of sacks for Jones this season at 7.5.
Over, I'll give him 10.
Okay. Back to the Patriots. Over under number of games Cam actually plays. I'm going to set it at 12.5. He has had years where we talked about him being injured, but other than last year where he only played 2 games, the year before where he was dinged up, played 14 games, and he's pretty much played 15 or 16 every other season he's been in the NFL. So I think in this case where you're talking about maybe we're crazy, or maybe Jarrett Stidham is the guy. Patriots do believe in him, like all the coaches are leaking to different NFL reporters, and we're supposed to buy that. Maybe it's true. But if he starts and he doesn't do well, I can't imagine they could go more than like 1-3 before you turn to somebody else. Turn to Cam Newton, who's sitting back there, and you think you can win now. So I imagine even if Cam isn't starter day 1, by game 4, that's about where you're like, okay, do we need to turn to the veteran? 12.5, over under.
I'm not going to guarantee Cam plays all 16, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like he's going to be the week 1 starter. I think also Cam has something to prove. There's something about him going to play for Belichick, which obviously Belichick's not easy to play for, but guys want to win, and Belichick has the rings. So I'm going to say over 12.5. I think they're going to be up to something this year in New England.
Yeah, and I think he's going to start. I think day 1 start, and then it's about does he get injured, which is I'm not going to just predict that. I'm going to predict off of, okay, is he going to be the starter? Yes, then I believe he'll go over 12.5 games. Over under number. Well, actually, I do want to say real quick. You're talking about how hard it is to play for Belichick. I feel like people have tried to say the opposite. Is like the Cam Newton is that type of big personality in terms of how he conducts media. Even though most of the time he's off the radar, he's done very few interviews with anybody throughout the course of his career. So it's kind of this 2 different personality types you see from Cam Newton. But in terms of the way he conducts himself in the media room, would go against the kind of Bill Belichick way, which I think is great that people bring that up and they're like, how is Cam Newton's hats any worse than everything Rob Gronkowski has done? Like,
that's a fair point.
So do you have any worry about that sort? Not like Cam trying to play for a strict person like Bill Belichick, but like Cam's personality not fitting with what is considered the Patriot way.
In year 1, no. I think they'll find a way to make it work. I know it's only a 1-year contract. Who knows what the Patriots are going to do after 2020? Maybe they keep Cam longer. Maybe they don't. But I feel like just for right now, I don't see any issues happening. I think Belichick has him under control. And I don't see any issues. Now, if it does end up into 2, 3, 4 years, I would say yes. But for this season, I feel like they'll get along just fine.
Yeah, I imagine that. And fine enough to win 10 games, 11 games. We'll go 10.5 is the over-under for number of games that the Patriots win.
I'm gonna say 11, so I'm gonna sneak over the 10.5. I feel like they're still better than the Jets, obviously, and I think they're still just right above the Dolphins and the Bills. So I think right there, if they go 4-2 or 5-1 against the East, that'll be enough to get them there halfway there. And so I'm gonna say 11.
I've said it for the last decade. I'm not going to pick against the Patriots until they finally have a season that shows it's possible. At this point, that hasn't happened. So if I happen to lose this bet because this is the first year they can't get it done, then fine. So be it. But otherwise, everybody else who has tried to jump the line and pick the first year for it to happen, you've lost a lot of money over the last 20 years of the Patriots run. So good luck, guys. I'm going to take the over on this one as well. Next up, we're going to talk about the NBA for a little bit. This is interesting because there's nothing really changed since, I had my last podcast on Saturday. The little things, bubble cost gets leaked. It's $150 million at this point. That's I don't even know if that's a big number. I don't even know with NBA money whether that matters. But I think more importantly is Giannis bringing up a great point that kind of goes counter to what you hear a lot of fans talking about, which is kind of the asterisk year. Like, we're in this pandemic, obviously. If you can get things going, there is the potential for, as we mentioned earlier, players getting coronavirus in the middle of a playoff run, and we don't even know what the response from the league will be. It could be a couple weeks off. It could be pulling one guy out of the rotation and not doing a full team quarantine, which goes against kind of what they've implied they would do, but what else are you going to do? It's a short timeline. If you lose a couple weeks for this season and just try to wait it out, by the time you finish the NBA Finals, you will not be on track to start the next season, which they plan on starting in December. So it's tough to imagine what they will do when they get put in those situations. But if games can be played and you can actually go through the playoffs and have a team, no matter what happens to get there, like, the asterisk won't be that, oh, you didn't really win a championship. That was during a year where other people got injured. Unless it's like literally the top stars, it's like the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Bucks all get pulled out, and somehow, the Brooklyn Nets walk in with none of their players and find a way to win. Don't think those things are going to happen. So that would be the only way. But otherwise, there is so much pressure. This is harder than in every other year. You're not going to get home court if you're, if you're the Lakers, if you're the Bucks, if you're the Clippers. That advantage that you have built in is gone. You're all playing at Disney World without fans, and it's just about who's going to be better on the court in these circumstances. And I agree with Giannis saying, I think the pandemic makes this title harder to win, and I think that will add to your legacy. It won't detract from this big moment if you are able to win the NBA championship. Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because the one thing that I will give credit to the NBA, and this is not anything they did, this is just how the calendar falls, and when the pandemic hit, each team had already played, 65, 66 games before the season suddenly came to a stop. And so it's not like it happened in January when they'd only played 30 games. Like, we knew the second week of March who the best teams were. Like, the seeds would have changed a little bit throughout the end of March and the beginning of April. So the 2 and the 3, the 6 and the 7, there would have been some shuffling around. But we had already played 80% of the season. So we knew which teams were going to be getting at the best seeds, getting, home court, having the best chances to win a title. Now, no one predicted the season to stop for 4 months. So I do think that there's some extra challenges there. But the nice thing the NBA has is they had almost a full season to play with each other, to know, hey, we can really do it. Like, this team is special. I know the 3 teams you mentioned, the 2 teams from LA, Lakers, Clippers, and then, of course, the Bucks in the East. Those feel like the favorites. For me, I agree. Outside of those 3, what teams do you think are dangerous enough to make a run to not only go to the finals, but maybe even, get a ring?
I think for me, it's hard to imagine anybody else in the West, even though they have so many good teams. I just don't know anybody that could do any more than play spoiler to one of the Lakers or the Clippers. I just can't imagine, if there is a team that had to face both, would beat both, So in my mind, it really is just the Lakers and the Clippers, and that's going to be a hell of a series. And if we are deprived of that due to COVID, it's going to be really sad because I was excited all year, and they kept making moves that just kind of added to it. It's like these weren't teams that it's like, okay, here's kind of what they have, and maybe they lost a player who's injured, this or that. Like, they were adding role players, guys off the bench who otherwise are starters in most of the teams around the league. The Lakers are loaded to the point this is a topic we're going to talk about a little bit later. Avery Bradley decides to not go into the bubble, and there are people talking about, did they even lose anything? It's like, that's how crazy stacked the Lakers are, and the Clippers aren't much different. I think if there's a team that could push and be a potential title team, it's the Celtics. And it all depends on if the Jason Tatum we watched over the final weeks of the season is the one who can show up, even with this time off, where part of it's momentum and part of it is, was that stretch the new Jason Tatum? As he reached that new level? Is that worship of Kobe, the Black Mamba, did that finally click? Or was it just a really, really good run that looked amazing, but he's not necessarily going to be that player going forward? If he's that player going forward, the Celtics have so many wing options that they are the only team, I think, other than the Clippers, who can really say, we have the guys who can try to keep up with Giannis for a series, And really the only one is Kawhi, and then, okay, the Celtics have 3 different wings that over the course of a game, they can do as much as they can to slow him down, and as long as Giannis isn't putting up the crazy all-time numbers that he's been putting up, you can stay in that series, and with a superstar like Jason Tatum, maybe you can push him, go to 7, and steal it, and go on. I just don't know. I don't know what that team will look like. If it can come back and look like it did heading into the stoppage, then they definitely have a chance. But even that is not saying they will win, just that they can win.
Yeah, I think the Celtics are really strong, and I think they're good. This feels like the year, despite the sudden stoppage, and then, assuming we resume play in a few weeks, this feels like the year that Giannis finally makes it to the NBA Finals, because he's won an MVP. He's proven that he can really not only be as good as anyone in the NBA, but better. He has a supporting cast. It feels like the Bucks. Now, I don't think the Bucks can win the finals, but I think they can get to the finals. But it feels like it's Milwaukee, but I think Boston's really good. In the West, I think that Houston has a lot of good pieces, but I'm a firm believer that James Harden will never win a championship. That's a hill I'm going to die on, and so I think that Houston's just not there. But I think they're fun to watch. I think they score a lot of points. I think they shoot the ball really well. So I'm excited to see what they do.
For a few other reasons, which is that the biggest problem with James Harden is after a year of being the best scorer in the league and just putting up monstrous points with monstrous minutes, he would get to the playoffs, and when it's that ISO ball, just him as the main factor, his legs were gone. And now they've had 3 months off. Everybody's legs are kind of gone, but not in the same way. This is in terms of getting into game shape. But in terms of being beat down over the course of a season where everybody else is doing load management and James Harden instead is just being the greatest regular season player and then not the greatest playoff player, that might change. He might be ready to go, well-rested, coming in to a bunch of other teams that haven't quite gotten to the mesh with the way they play defense, kind of getting back into it. And James Harden is the guy, I think, day one, he'll probably walk into the playoffs ready to be the guy he needs to be, and that might give him a bigger advantage than he's had in years past. I don't think that gets him to a championship, but it's probably the best shot he has.
Yeah, I know that last week the NBA released the schedule, the regular season schedule for the 8 games all the teams have that runs July 31st through August 14th or whatever. How do you feel like the teams at the top that don't have a lot to play for, they don't have home court advantage to play for because they're all in Orlando on the same court? So how do you feel like the teams at the top are going to handle workload? Are they going to play their stars for 30 to 40 minutes for all 8 games? Maybe play 6, sit 2? How do you think that's going to work out?
I imagine there's going to be some load management that's just based on, okay, we just are trying to take our time to get them up to speed at the right moment. We don't want to go too fast early. We also don't want to be too careful where we get to the first playoff round and we didn't give them enough minutes to get themselves comfortable. I think it'll definitely be kind of that focus. But the home court isn't the only thing, though. It is important to keep your spot. Any of the teams that kind of could move down the board and get put into a worse matchup, or will play a team that the team's fighting for 8th, there might be a team that the Lakers want to face more than another team, a la the Pelicans. So maybe I didn't look at the schedule to figure out who faces which teams win, but there might be a little bit of that of, okay, we're not worried about losing this game, but it would be great to beat the Pelicans, to beat this team that we don't want to slide into the position of facing us in that first round. And I think that might be the only team. I don't know if there's another team, because all of the teams that got pulled in on the East that weren't already in the top 8 aren't good. In terms of in the West, it's like we have a few teams that are okay. They're not going to threaten the Lakers. The Pelicans are that one team that were on the come up, that just the play stopped before they could make their return, and just with how much Zion has brought to the table, how much some of those younger players that we weren't sure what they could do, but now I don't know if they're good enough to lead the charge to beat the Lakers, but they could definitely give them hell in the first round that the Lakers don't want to have happen. You're talking about like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, who we weren't sure if they could be legitimate top guys in the NBA. They're not superstars, but they're playing really good right now. They've improved a lot. Drew Holiday, like that Pelicans team is scarier than I think everybody who's like 6 through 10 in the West. So that could come into play. I think otherwise some of the top teams are really just going to focus on how do we get our players into the right shape at the right time. And I'm not nearly smart enough to figure out or predict how they will end up playing that to make that work out. But definitely we'll look at that much more than the wins and losses, I think.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that as a fan I'm excited about is they stuck with the same playoff format. 8 in the East, 8 in the West, and best of 7. I know there was some conversations about shortening it to either only 4 teams or 6 teams or maybe best of 5, but it feels like it's going to feel like a real playoffs. Assuming they're able to keep.
I wanted the World Cup like intro to the playoffs. They could have kept it the way they had it, except maybe do like the lack of conferences, just because you've lost home court advantage. This is your one time to have just seeded top to bottom 1 through 16. I think that could have been great, but I was excited for the World Cup thing. I think in this kind of pandemic, if you're going to play 8 meaningless games that are just increasing the risk of giving your players COVID, give us something cool. Give us a World Cup style play-in tournament. Like, that's all I wanted.
I would have enjoyed that. I definitely would have. Everything was so weird anyway. No one would have been mad about it because they were like, well, the world stopped for a few months. Like there was no sports, so let's just shake it up. But no, I think that we talked a little bit earlier about there being an asterisk next to the champion. I feel like with a season, you're gonna have to win the best of 7 series 4 times. You're gonna have to do it 4 times, 3 against your conference, and then 1 in the finals. Whoever does that, they're gonna be the champion, and deservedly so.
Yeah, that's fair. We mentioned earlier Avery Bradley being one who decided to sit out. Obviously, the big news, J.R. Smith ends up signing with the Lakers, which takes away the caveat that I hoped LeBron would get, which is that, other people, forced him to have players like J.R. Smith making a boneheaded play in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. And I was like, nope, LeBron keeps bringing J.R. Smith, so any J.R. Smith mistakes are on LeBron at this point. Like, we can't even try to blame other people. But more importantly, over-under on the minutes per game he will play. Avery Bradley averaged 24.2. Obviously, with some of the players on the team, when you guys have guys like Rajon Rondo, who had lost minutes towards the end of the year and isn't playing nearly as well, we'll see if he's playing better with time off. That's going to be very interesting to see whether the older players, it's like, is this a boon or a bust to have that extra time off? Are you going to be well rested, or are you going to take that much longer to get yourself into shape because of your age? Rajon Rondo is one of those guys, but I think a lot of people are looking more at Alex Caruso as being a guy who I think was around 17 minutes a game, and he might get a few of those Avery Bradley minutes, but I think it's just kind of like, is J.R. Smith going to take over the Alex Caruso role while Alex Caruso takes over Avery Bradley role? Are they going to rely on Rajon Rondo more than they had planned to do? What's kind of the plan? I think for right now, I'm going to go with J.R. Smith, 17 and a half minutes per game. Over, under, what do you got?
I'm going to go over barely. If you would ask me 24, I would say under, but I'm thinking right around 18 to 21. I don't think he'll get a lot of minutes, but I do think they'll use him. They have depth. Even with no Avery Bradley, they have guys that can not only handle the ball, but can also get LeBron the ball and they can score. So I'm going to say just over 17.5.
All right, that's fair. I'd like to see what happens just because it's a lot of minutes to replace. And, I feel like Alex Caruso could take on the 24 minutes and that be good, but then that's still 17 minutes. Where do they go? And everybody else kind of is already in the rotation. They have something. When you're trying to figure out one more player to add, there's nobody else other than J.R. Smith that you just signed. So it'll probably be at least 15. I'm not sure if it's going to be over 17 and a half minutes, but it'll be right in there. It really just depends on how he plays versus how some of the other guys play. And a lot of it's just kind of how you fit, Is J.R. Smith the comparable to Avery Bradley? Not really, but he's also a big guard, and you're losing somebody who most of what he brought to the table was his defensive prowess. And so just saying, oh, let's go with Alex Caruso, he's not bringing the same style of defense to the table. And not even just what Avery Bradley put, because very few people play the type of defense Avery Bradley plays. But he's not even necessarily going to bring you the same thing that J.R. Smith is. So it'll just be interesting to see kind of how those lineups play out for the Lakers. Do you have any other NBA things that have stood out to you that you think are going to be really important going into this bubble?
Yeah, well, I mean, we mentioned, Antetokounmpo talking about how this one's going to be even harder. I think Austin Rivers kind of said the same thing. There's been a couple of guys that have really been honest about most of the league is on board to get together to go to Orlando to compete for a championship. I mean, that's what they've trained their whole lives for, is to be a world champion in the association. But there's also a lot of things going on in the world. The last few weeks, the last few months. So it'll be interesting to see how the players, interact with each other, how the media portrays the games. I'm expecting huge ratings. Obviously we know it's going to be in an empty arena. That's been established for a long time. But I feel like it's going to be there's obviously lots of different streaming platforms, but I'm excited to see the TV ratings. That's why I kind of wish it went straight to the playoffs, because I don't know what the rating is going to be like for regular season games at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. But I think people haven't watched basketball in so long. They're going to tune into the final regular season for 2 weeks. And then once the playoffs start, I really feel like it's going to be, a heavy hitter. They are going to be going up against some other sports. But I don't know. I don't know how, once August ends, when they get into the second round of the playoffs and then into the Western Eastern Conference Finals, they'll be going up against football, assuming we have a football season. And so that's what I'm interested in seeing. Right now, they're planning on 2.5 months, from July 31st to October 13th. If the finals go 7 games, they're planning on 2.5 months of basketball, which seems like a daunting task in the country that we live in the society of a pandemic. But I want to see what happens on a Sunday afternoon. Obviously, we don't know the playoff schedule yet, but there's going to be some sort of overlap with an NFL game and an NBA playoff game at the same time, which we've obviously never had before, because usually the playoffs in the NBA are over in June. So I'm excited to see what the playoffs are like, but we still have a long ways to go to get to that first and second round.
All right. We're going to do what we did at the beginning of the show, and we're going to just shut our brains off and be optimistic for no reason. Imagine this plays out. We get through all of the playoffs. We have an NBA champion. I want to get your picks for who wins that, and we'll start with the conferences. So I'll start with one I think I know the answer to. Eastern Conference champion for you is?
Milwaukee.
Now to the Western Conference, a little bit tougher. I want you to give me both teams. Who's in the Western Conference Finals?
It'll be LA versus LA, but I do like the Clippers going into the finals. They're that. I wanted to do an underdog. I really do, but the Lakers and Clippers are too good. I do like the Clippers to beat the Lakers in 7.
Jokic right now is I don't know if it's great shape or too skinny, but it's going to be interesting to see how he plays. He might just be a new man. If he could bring the same stuff to the table, but also be that much faster, that much quicker, Nuggets might be unstoppable, man. You're just leaving them out. You're just not even talking about them. It's crazy.
The Nuggets are really good. They're pretty young too. They're missing one piece. I think next year or in the next couple of years they could make a run to the finals. I don't think it's this year, but the Nuggets have been really impressive this season.
All right, so did you give me your finals pick, or did you just tell me Lakers and Clippers?
So I think the Bucks are good. I think if there's anything I've learned from watching Kawhi Leonard, I don't think that he just ever loses. So I like the Clippers to win it all. I think that Kawhi in the playoffs is just offense and defense. He's just a different player. Obviously, the Clippers, he has a great, supporting cast around him, but there's no one that I pick over Kawhi when it comes to playoff time.
Okay. In the picks I had from last week, at the end of the day, I think I finished on the Bucks as the pick to be NBA champion because I'm all about good bets, which is the Lakers and the Clippers for me is like a coin flip. And once that's the case, the Bucks as the team I think is chance that Boston can beat them, but it's still pretty solid Bucks. And if they make it to the NBA Finals, unless you see a major deficiency, that means they can be within a shot of winning. They can be within a game, whatever it takes. Like, it doesn't mean they will win, but if I'm going to take the smart bet, it's the team that I think has the best shot of even making the finals. Lakers-Clippers, I'd feel like the Bucks have a better shot of beating the Lakers, but I don't necessarily think I agree with you on Kawhi is just unstoppable in the playoffs because we haven't always seen that. We've seen 2 years of 6 years where he's made it to the championship and won, And obviously there were injuries involved. There were things that got in the way. But it was 2 years, and one of those championships was against a Warriors team where all of the stars got injured. I'm not taking that away from Kawhi, but if I'm going to use that to predict the future, I'm looking at a Lakers team that LeBron has had a lot of really good teams at a lot of different times. He's had very few that have had this much depth and had that elite of a player next to him, and a player that complements him so well. LeBron, as he's shifted to more of the point guard first role of making sure he gets the assist, and having a guy like Anthony Davis that if you play normal defense against LeBron, what it takes to stop him, like other times he would pitch it out to guys who could do something. He's been pitching it to Anthony Davis, who's wide open to just dunk it on people's faces. Like, it's been the scariest thing to see. And when you add what Anthony Davis does on the defensive end, all of a sudden, playoff LeBron is a different defense. Anthony Davis is just a force down low and somebody who's athletic enough to play in the pick and roll. All of a sudden, that team is so scary that I don't know if the Clippers can beat them. I also don't know if the Lakers are a lock to beat the Bucks if they face them, because I think Kawhi going up against Giannis is better than what Anthony Davis can do against Giannis, or even what LeBron, Anthony Davis switching off can do. It's tough. Like if there was one more defensive wing for the Lakers, I'd feel more comfortable in thinking the Lakers could knock off the Bucks.
How many playoff series has Anthony Davis won?
Hey, he's going to start winning a bunch with them. I mean, name one player. Does Kawhi play on the Anthony Davis Pelicans and wins more series than Anthony Davis did? I'm not even sure if he makes the with those teams.
I'm not sure. The Lakers are really good. No, they are really good. I just feel like in the best of seven, the Clippers have enough. I'm
not saying they don't. I just also I don't need you coming in with this. I can't even tell if you're joking or not because you say these things so consistently. They feel like your actual opinions. I know you have this bitter feeling towards LeBron, but just because Anthony Davis on the same team as him, did it transfer? Now you're going to attack Anthony Davis that way? Pretend like you don't know the context of his years in the NBA? Come on, man.
In the last 6 years, Kawhi has 2 rings, LeBron has 1. So, I mean, I know that there's a lot of different factors. They're on different teams now, but I like Kawhi's chances.
3 rings during Kawhi's stint in the NBA?
Well, LeBron had to leave to go to South Beach to team up with some all-stars to do it.
Have more rings than Kawhi over the years he's in the NBA. That's all I'm asking. See, if you can come up with bullshit or whatever you're calling them, I can too. I'll do it.
You know what?
Basketball, Collins, why brought you on here? But if you want to talk some nonsense, I'm down for that too.
Yeah, that's fair. Here's the thing. You mentioned it earlier. All that we deserve, all that we want as sports fans is Lakers Clippers Western Conference Finals. Like, I just want the bubble to last long enough in Orlando to watch the Clippers and Lakers play a Western Conference Finals. Like, if it falls apart before that and it gets canceled, I'm going to be really disappointed because we deserve that. I do care who wins, but I just want to see those teams go against each other in best of 7.
I need it. I need the bubble to last long enough to get there so that your bubble can burst as LeBron takes down the Clippers. So I think, yeah, those are the big things. I think, honestly, as I didn't get to keep up with enough NBA this year to be the kind of like NBA head who's going to tell you about the teams on the outside, the guys who you don't even think they have a real shot of making too much noise in the playoffs. But the pieces that you get to watch and kind of see how they develop, they could potentially be big factors in years to come. Like, I haven't even got to watch enough NBA to kind of have those, but I feel like the way this is structured and the way we have nothing else to watch, that I'm going to be so invested in the NBA 8-game play-in that by the time we get to the playoffs, I will be talking about the 3-6 matchups in both conferences. Even in the East, that definitely doesn't matter. I'll just be telling you exactly how it's going to play out. But at this point, it's like, I don't have it yet, but once we kind of get once it's that much closer and if MLB can go like a week without some major outbreak, it'll be like more like, I believe this can happen, and I'll start investing and paying attention and be like, all right, we got to figure this out because it's all in on NBA right now. And I can't even be optimistic enough to even pretend the NFL is going to happen this year. Like, I can imagine a world where the NBA happens, but the NFL is still just like, no. But I wish. We'll see. Who knows? I could be wrong. This is the Too Many Points podcast. Part of it is making bets. I made bets last week about how many games would actually be played in the NFL and the NBA, and I could be wrong. I didn't put real money on it, so that's smart of me, right? I'm not a gambling addict yet, but I will be in a couple weeks once we have 6 sports happening, supposedly. Colin, right now, what's the sport you're going to be watching? You're going to get off this Zoom call, and you're going to put in a bet. What sport is it going to be on?
I'm not going to lie. Over the weekend, I did watch a little bit of the NWSL, just because I wanted a live sport to watch. So maybe that. But no, I do think what's most exciting for me, in less than a month, I could be watching TV and flip it from an NBA game to an MLB game, and that brings me more joy than I've had in a long time.
Yeah, and I can flip it from an NBA game to the NBA simulation games that are happening online. You can bet on those as well. So, yeah, this is going to be exciting. July, I'm not going to be like the super rah-rah guy because, I still have a lot of doubts, but I can't pretend I'll be a person who's going to, talk about the problems of trying to play sports right now once they start. Once they start, I'm 100% in. I'll be watching every second that I can get. But that's all we have for this episode. We'll be back probably after the 4th of July to end up talking about whatever is going on. There's going to be a steady stream. I plan to release episodes every Sunday, and then any Thursday that I can make happen, trying to double up on the weekly content if I can. So I hope our listeners are going to keep up with us and listen to our hot sports takes, our Too Many Points that come every week, and maybe we can help everybody make some money once some actual games start happening.
Yes, sir.
Colin, anything else you want to say to our audience before we get on out of here?
No, I'm just going to be optimistic for the rest of the month. And if it burns me, it burns me. But let's do it. Sports are back.
Woo! That's all we have for this episode of Too Many Points on the Tell Me More podcast. Later, folks.